Masked Hero.
Hello everybody and welcome to another Marvel Champions discussion video. This week we are going to be looking at my reflections back on Con of Heroes 2026, which has wrapped up, and I have now had a little bit of time to regenerate from the experience. What this is basically going to look is we're going to look at every single day of the convention, the 3 days we did in Bloomington, Minnesota. I will be looking at the decks that I played, the 4 of which I talked about a few weeks ago, and then some other ones that kind of came into the fold over the course of the weekend, because I am fortunate enough to be local, and we'll make a good time of it. I will say right up front, while I enjoyed going to the game center every year, it is on the other side of the metro for me, so this was a much closer drive, but I will even say that just as a play space, I think that the hotel that we were playing at, with the exception of like one point on Saturday night, was perfect. We had plenty of room. The volume was reasonable. We weren't getting all this reflection of sound because we were in this tight space. It was like the area was designed with the acoustics to basically not disperse all of the sound directly back onto us. We were right next to a pool. A 5-foot wall was kind of the divider between us and the pool. But I've been in this space before. I've gone to conventions here before. I kind of knew once I saw a picture where we were going to be, what we were going to be up to. And yeah, overall, I think that this was an upgrade in terms of just space to play at. Turning my attention to the actual events of the convention, I was not prepared for the fact that the doors were going to be opening up at 8 o'clock a.m. So I did not roll in until about 9:15, and I rolled in, took my backpack off, and then sat down for a 3-table game of Thunderbolts with the Critical Encounters crew. They had kindly waited for me. I took basically 2 back-to-back turns, and we were off to the races, and that was a lot of fun. 3 tables of, I believe it was only 3 players per table, but basically we were doing a multi-table multiplayer event where the Thunderbolts were being passed back and forth. We had a special deck to draw out of for certain events. And yeah, it was chaos, and it went on for maybe longer than I was expecting, but there was never a point when I went, this is dragging on, I don't want to be here anymore. I was having a good time. And I'm so happy that they were able to put that together. And I will point out again later, but we did play it again on Saturday. And again, it was the same experience. You kind of learn from your mistakes. You go, okay, this has gotten out of hand. We need to take down this person. Atlas was definitely a target of our ire. I think Mach 4 was also one of those ones that I feel like in both games just survived far longer than you would expect them to. But all things good all around. The next thing that I did was I did bring my custom Count Nefaria scenario, and I played it for the first time with new people, one of which being D. Vader from the Critical Encounters Discord server, and 2 other people that had come into town. They knew each other. I think overall, what I learned from this particular game, and kind of it carried on to the future games, because I think I played my Count Nefaria scenario 6 times. I thought I played it more than that, but when I looked back and I kind of reflected, I went, oh, it was only 6 times. But what I definitely learned is with custom content, if you're the person that made it, let the other players read the cards. Don't take the encounter card, go, okay, this is what happens. Let them process it, let them understand, because you know what it's supposed to do, but they might read it and kind of like, well, first of all, find errors in your writing. I found that with a playtest I did about a month ago that I just wasn't able to get a reprint of. But just like they can give you feedback, and that's what's important. And this was, I think, a really fun game to just kind of like take the rust off, because I also, prior to these 2 games, I had not like played any Marvel Champions for like a week and a half, so that I would be ready to just play a bunch of games. And I would say overall, just having a chance to get that feedback and to just understand the proper etiquette for how to present a custom content scenario to new players was very helpful. So moving on from that, I didn't realize necessarily what I was getting myself into, but at some point I saw Andy N. He is the designer of the Mr. Negative scenario, and I'll even say that he got me a copy, and during my day of rest between the convention and today, I did play it, and I'll put right up front here. I was going to put this in the shoutouts, but I will say that I consider, now I've played Mr. Negative 3 or 4 times, I would consider it a canon Marvel Champions scenario. Like, in my mind, it is a scenario pack that exists, and I consider it to be real. That's my own skewed perspective, but I've now played it a few times. It is great. So I saw him, and I said, hey, are you up for a game? Basically, a lot of the convention is like, hey, you got an extra spot? If not, I'll move on. And he said yes. I didn't realize we were about to sit down for the Loki massive multiplayer event, but I still had fun. And I definitely would not have passed up on this chance to play with him. I would not have passed up on the Loki event, but I will say that the Loki event is kind of front loaded with a lot of things to remember. And that does leave me in a place where I'm just going, okay, so how does this work? What are we doing? How does everything work? What is the thing we need to do? What is the goal? And that one is one of those scenarios that just kind of like becomes very murky to me. I was able to fit this theme. They were already going to be doing a Tech Bros kind of theme for their heroes. So we had Rocket, Ant-Man, and Iron Man already at the table. And I brought Shuri, who my Aggression Shuri deck, which we'll talk about in a little bit, playing with the tech and trying to hopefully not hit the Shadow of the Past with Ant-Man, because that would bring in the side scheme that just turns off all tech, and we would have been really up a creek. But we successfully were able to live long enough to see the massive multiplayer event through. It sounds like there was one table that, because you can't die in the scenario, you can't be defeated necessarily, they just never focused on defending or thwarting the main scheme. And so I believe if I understand it correctly, they had like 47 deaths, which is incredible. I think at the end of the day, though, just playing that scenario, getting to play with somebody who I haven't really played maybe more than like 2 or 3 games with, lifetime, was just fun. Moving on from that, I went and had dinner real quick, because all of a sudden I realized that I had gone from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. without eating. So I went and ate dinner real quick, and then played my second game of Count Nefaria against 2 other people, Verdane and Board Game Lawyer, both of which I know through Critical Encounters. And that was really fun, just getting to see the scenario through the lens of some people that I knew, that I kind of talked the scenario up with, but just had never had a chance to do it with. And that was a really fun time. Board Game Lawyer died to Count Nefaria, and then me and Verdane were able to just push through and defeat the scenario, and it was a good time. After that, I met somebody, and I apologize. Again, I should have been writing down names. I was not writing down names. I had all the opportunity to, and I just didn't. But I played with a person who they had in their possession a fixed Wrecking Crew. And I'm somebody who doesn't necessarily love Wrecking Crew. It's the only piece of the actual physical content that I never went out of my way to get. And we played it, and unfortunately, just with the mod sets we played with, it just barreled out of control, and we lost pretty handedly. That was going to be my last game for the night. Because it wrapped up so quickly, I was able to do one more Count Nefaria scenario with that gentleman and somebody from the community, V. Jackson, who had Andy N., who I've already talked about. Andy N. had designed a custom white tiger hero that was basically taking Wonder Man, but instead of caring about energy resources, cared about physical resources. And so we got to do Count Nefaria custom content with other custom content. And I wish I could have really taken in everything to do with White Tiger, but it looked great and it played great, and it was another really good time. But at that point, besides saying goodbye to everybody for the night and heading back to my own bed to sleep, that was going to be it for me for the day. And I suppose somewhere in here, it would have been before the Loki massive multiplayer event. Fantasy Flight was there, and they just gave like a talk about taking questions from the audience that went through Olivia, and she asked just the general questions. There was nothing that really came out of it besides giving us the previews for Cloak and Dagger that were on the Con of Heroes website. We didn't get any juicy information. There probably were stories in there that I just didn't fully take in because I couldn't hear through the speakers or whatever. But they were there. Again, they said kind words. They had seen the channel before, and I appreciated that. But then it was time to go home and just sleep for 8 hours or whatever, and wake up the next day for day number 2. Got there pretty fresh and early, right at 8 o'clock, and because I forgot to get my coffee going before I left, I was halfway there and realized I didn't have my coffee with me. I never even started my coffee. I was still waking up, and my first game of the day was a scrimmage game against Ebony Maw and 3 individuals I had never met, but they were all great. I played my so I had switched some stuff up. I had brought a Justice Tigra deck that I found off the internet that we'll talk about near the end of this. And because there was 4 of us, we all got 2 of the spells. I ended up getting 2 copies of Fireball, which meant that long term, possibly less, but it could be 4 turns from now, I was going to take 8 damage. I am a 10 hit point hero that knows that they have 8 damage coming eventually. And that became just the thing that I was basing all my decisions off of. I cannot take any damage, because if I take any damage, I could very well just die out of nowhere to these 2 fireballs. We ended up winning. Again, it was a scrimmage, so we were only going through 1 stage. But I also learned, fun thing to do is when you are at a convention, maybe the first couple of games in the morning while you're still letting your brain kind of kick in, just do scrimmages. You get to play with more people overall, and it's simpler, and you don't have to sit here and worry about 2 stages. And that's a recommendation I would say. After that, I was just kind of minding my own business, and Andy R. from the All Hands on Deck podcast walked up. He had just gotten there. I was able to play with him and Boom Guy, so I was able to have a All Hands on Deck reunion as we played against my Count Nefaria scenario. I think that went over really well. Again, I got to get the perspective of some other people, and I think the only thing kind of working against me was that I was already still letting my brain wake up. So I don't know if I was as energetic as I would have liked to have been. But at the same time, playing custom content, getting to show it off to some community members, I was hooting and hollering in my mind. I was so excited to do this. Got to see Boom Guy play with Magneto, and I played with Thor, and I don't remember precisely who Andy played with. Didn't get as much critical feedback from this one. Just kind of, again, I think this is where the whole idea of let the other players read the cards became fully front of brain. Go, okay, I'm not going to tell you what the cards do. I'm going to let you see what the cards do so that you're understanding what's happening. You're understanding the thematics of everything. And overall, just great time. The next game I played was with the Charred Gambit and his friend and another player who had a Thor deck that I was very impressed by. And we played against the Red Skull. That was a fun game, especially to watch Thor just go off and have 8 mains in front of him, bring it, draw a bunch of cards, and just I've never had more fun against Red Skull than that game. And that was, just overall a good time, and gave me a chance to, I guess I got to see, I believe Charred Gambit played with Wonder Man in that game, and then he gave me an altar of Wonder Man, which obviously is up on screen. It was great, and it looks really sweet. And then it was time again for another Thunderbolts scenario. So we did the 3 tables Thunderbolts game again. Good time. It's kind of the same thing as I said previously. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of things about take Atlas out when we have the chance. I believe I was playing the Protection She-Hulk deck that I brought. That sounds right, because I feel like I was just trying to do a bunch of damage. But long story short, Atlas got to 22 of 24 damage, I believe. It was 2 off. It was either 20 or 22 of 22 or 24. Before going back to the Thunderbolt's backup place, where because of the number of players, he healed the 9 damage. So I was just short of defeating him, and just did not defeat him. But still, overall, we played the Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts, I think, is one of the best scenarios in the game, and this was just a great way to take that idea and really amp it up. And again, I had a great time doing that. Then it was just time to take a minor break, eat dinner again. I actually went home, ate dinner with my family, gave myself a nice refresher, and then came back and was able to play a mod set that will be available day 1 of Assemble, which is a convention that will be happening in Connecticut, I believe. And I won't say what necessarily was. It is Marvel Zombies themed, but I won't get into anything beyond that. But what I will say is that may not necessarily be my flavor or something that I would want to play over and over again, but it was provided by Brant from Step Into the Portal. He allowed us to play it and just kind of give us an idea of what we're doing. I played it with him that time. I actually played this mod twice. And like I said, it's not something that I necessarily would probably play myself much, but I definitely see the passion that he had, and I definitely want to just say that, this is, if you're going to assemble, I think you're going to be in for a good time. But then from there, I wrapped up the night with some of the it's exhaustion giggles, playing a pumped up version of Loki, the original one with the Infinity Gauntlet, with someone from locally, along with 2 other players who were in from out of town. And we just got completely decimated in a way where everyone's aspect just didn't matter. Like the Justice Iceman deck really never thwarted. The Aggression Venom deck did most of the thwarting. I was in protection with She-Hulk, and I was doing most of the damage. It was everywhere. And there was just a point when like all we could do was laugh at just how bad the scenario was going for us. But we knew there was going to be a scrimmage up front, and we did end up winning. But it became this thing where like the next morning I ran into the 2 out-of-towners, and I was just like, what was that? Like, what happened last night? And yeah, just overall, it was a nice way to cap off the night, and with some laughs. Definitely have not laughed that much playing Marvel Champions in quite a while, but I think that's also the power of the game, is that these moments come up, and you get to have these genuine human moments where you're just laughing and having a good time. And yeah, could not recommend more just doing random pickup games and just seeing what happened. Moving on to day 3, woke up the next morning to do a 3-player scrimmage game of Green Goblin while I kind of like waited for the next game that I was going to be playing. Somebody just needed to kind of like pack up because they were going to be heading out. I think we were playing Expert. It got out of control, and I think the game resolved because we actually schemed out. But it just overall, yes, it was a fun time. It was just a fun game to wake up to and just kind of play. Not too much more to say about it, but we lost pretty handedly. Now, turning the corner to the game that I was stalling out for, which was to play with Daniel, Big Foam Loaf from Critical Encounters. We played a game of the She-Hulk leader, and that was interesting because of just how much damage She-Hulk can dole out. We ended up being fine. I'm pretty sure we won that game as well, but it was definitely one of those ones where we got to sit back and just like have a good laugh. I think this was the game where Daniel played Hercules for the first time. Am I remembering that correctly? Or no, he was playing Black Widow, but the person that brought it, Maka, had brought the deck. Maka. He brought the deck, but he accidentally, instead of putting in the surveillance team, he put it in interrogation room. So when Daniel went to go play Monica Chang, there was nothing for him to go grab. And yeah, that's the standout moment of that game, was that the mistake in deck list foiled our plans. Then I was able to play another game of Count Nefaria with the Critical Encounters crew, along with Kennedy Hawk, who was one of the people that put together the convention. And I got to watch Kennedy Hawk really just break the scenario. He was playing Doctor Strange and had the leadership Cyclops, and I think he dealt somewhere between 30 and 40 damage that in a single turn, and it was just impressive. Like, I don't even care that like he essentially busted open the scenario. I know that was that Maka, I think, was playing some deck, and at some point put down the basic ally Vivian, and she was able to just blank one of the attachments that's in the scenario, so that it just wasn't even a problem. And yet, just overall, watching the scenario just get broken in half was really a lot of fun. Because you want to see that. You want to see when somebody just really goes wild and like has no regard for what you've worked on and just went, no, we're just gonna end this quickly. And that was a fun time. And as we were winding down the day, I was able to do the Assemble mod again, this time with some of the Critical Encounters crew. D. Vader was there, and I got to see him pilot. He borrowed the deck, but to pilot a altered version of the Drunken Master Shadowcat deck, and I'd never really seen that in kind of like really kind of going off, and so it was interesting just to see that happen. And yeah, just overall, that was another fun game. It was a little bit different than the other one, because the other one I was actually playing with Brant. This one was just the Critical Encounters crew, and so we were kind of taking it on, and I knew what to expect. Everybody else didn't, because I'd already played the scenario. But yeah, overall, it was, again, just speaks to that this was a different scenario using the zombie mods. This was a fun experiment, and it showed actually the power of the design. Again, maybe not something I would necessarily want to play over and over again, but I'm just not a Marvel Zombies person right up front anyway. And wrapping up the entire convention, as I was ending the day, I was able to play with someone from out of town. I believe he was from New Zealand, but he was a game designer. of some sort. And I should have asked more questions, but I was so exhausted from the weekend. And there's also a little bit in me that has like this, the anxiety, it's social anxiety, to just not necessarily dig too far into people's lives, but to just play Count Nefaria one more time, and get his feedback of like, this thematically doesn't kind of link together, like in gameplay, like this action and this action on this villain card, like don't necessarily tie together. Maybe you want to reconsider that. And all the information that I got, because I don't consider Count Nefaria to be 100% done. I would love to say that he's done, but I recognize that like there might be some fine tuning that I will certainly be thinking about over the course of the next month or two. But that, just wrapping up the convention, kind of picking his brain and everything, was a really, really fun time. Editing this in, because I completely forgot until I just turned off the recording. But before we talk about the decks, why don't we talk about a few shout-outs from the convention that I completely failed, even though it's right there on the bottom of my notes. So Corbin, he is a community member. He did a bunch of altars. I happened to do the raffle and got a entire 5 different altars of Deadpool that were all incredible. Corbin, to me, was a standout. Kudos to him. Thank you so much for being in the community. So much work, so much beautiful alt art that exists, and I wanted to make sure that he got his flowers. I want to get him to do an alt art of a custom hero I'm making in the future, so look out for that, hopefully for 2027. Then we have the Stunned and Confused podcast, Charred Gambit, and Nightcrawler, who all did different altars. I got a lot of Nightcrawler altars. I know a few of them were from the community member Nightcrawler himself. Got the Wonder Man that I already talked about from Char, and then a Winter Soldier and Cyclops from the hosts of the Stunned and Confused podcast. Great advertising for their podcasts and everything, and their channels in general, and pumping up the community. Wanted to give a shout out for the bingo cards that Bananas was doing. She ended up, the prize for getting a bingo on your bingo card, and there were a bunch of randomized things, was that you got an alt art all women copy of the standard one with just different art of female heroes and villains. And kudos again, like this was incredible, and it was a great prize where it's something that you don't feel left out if you didn't get it, if you didn't happen to get it, but it is something that you can put into every game, and that is just a good way to kind of like customize your game. And then the last thing I will say is that the card of the convention for me, no question, was Face the Past. I saw it played so many times. I saw so many different ways of using it, and I think that it has proven itself to be a fun, balanced card. And like I said, our alt art people make alt arts of these because the community wants it. But last thing, and I didn't write this down, but I remembered it, Band of Sirens did a fundraiser where he was collecting money for people affected by the ice raids here in Minneapolis. And if you gave out a certain amount of money, he would provide you with a alt art version of Sorcerer Supreme. It was awesome. I don't know what total number he got to. If I find out between now and then, I'll put the number up on screen. But like, thank you to the community. As somebody who's from Minnesota, helping out our state, thank you so much for that. Thank you, Band of Sirens, for doing this, for thinking of that. So shout out to him. But now we can talk about the deck lists. So very briefly, I will say that I played this Shuri deck, and I loved it. I would say the only thing that I would swap out of this was I never felt any reason to ever play Swordsman. And so there probably is just a better basic ally to kind of keep the power in all of us alive. But overall, this deck felt great. The amount of times where I was able to use Godslayer, a hand cannon, and my Tiger Panther Claws to just deal 9 damage somewhere was great. And I would definitely want to refine this deck, but I definitely think that it was a good time, and I'm happy that I played it, and it made me enjoy Shuri a little bit more. Possibly the low point of my weekend was trying to make this Justice Hulkling deck work. And I don't even think that necessarily it's the deck. I think it is really the hero. Like, I just haven't found a way to vibe with Teddy yet. And I hope that there will be a point in the future when I will really get to find a deck, an aspect that I really enjoy this hero in. But this was the one deck that I knew halfway through day one, I'm going to be taking this apart, and we'll talk about the deck that I kind of replaced it with in a little bit. But I don't think there was anything wrong with this deck. I just think that I'm just not the pilot for it. And so I did not keep it around, did not enjoy it enough. moving over to Nick Fury, I will say that this deck has a lot of promise. I can see a lot of ways where this was an interesting experiment. I did not keep this around past day one. I swapped to another deck that, again, we will talk about in just a second. I see a lot of promise. I think that just finding Stronger Together did not ever do anything for me. I wished it had. I think if I put in more allies, more shield allies, I think that it might have done something, but it was never a card I ever considered. And I have to wonder if maybe one less armored vest, or maybe take both copies of armored vest out and replace them with 2 shield allies. That might have been the way to go, but there was never a point when I wanted to even play the card. It just sat there in my hand. And I would say that everything else had its purpose. This is another list where I think that if I went back and I refined it, because these don't reflect any of the changes that people like on my YouTube video recommended. But I don't think I made any changes to this beforehand anyway. But I would say that more shield allies probably would have been more helpful, but that Stronger Together could either just go out, or we just need to build towards more of that. I think this is a deck that could very well have legs in the future. And then I was very tempted to swap out Scarlet Witch after the first day. I didn't. I do think that this deck, Rally the Troops, I don't feel like was really worth it. Never put it in. I'm actually surprised I have 2 copies of Team Training in here. Overall, I think this was a fun time because like Domino can put whatever ally, but you probably Quicksilver back on top, and then we can use Summoning Spell to just put the ally right back into play. I don't really have a bad thing to say about Scarlet Witch. I think that she's a great hero. I think I probably should have put in a little bit more Voltron stuff, like just things to make Quicksilver better. But overall, this was a deck where I was able to just kind of sit in Alter Ego and let Quicksilver do all the hard stuff, and that was a good time. And again, this is one where I would like to go back and maybe refine it. I do think there are a couple changes. Like I said, Rally the Troops does not need to be here. I think I just kind of felt like obliged to do that. And maybe also just the card pool I had involved. I didn't want to double up on anything. Like maybe this could be super power training or whatever. And also I didn't want to do the one where you pass out the different roles after you defeat it, or whatever that's called. Specialized training. I didn't want to have that. I didn't want to be handing out too many cards to people and then having to remember to get them all back. But this is another one where I think that I'm 80% there, and this could be a deck that I would revisit in the future. But then let's talk about the decks that I replaced some of these things with. We have this deck by Heroic Skeleton for Tigra. I would say that I think I might want to make a few changes. I'd really want to look at the deck list and go like what really fell, because I don't really feel like this deck had a lot of problems. I feel like it was a nice change of pace for Tigra, being able to kind of work on stuff. Float Like a Butterfly, I've always known is good, but this was really up to the point when it became awesome. Being able to do Tooth and Claw for 10 was great. And yeah, I think just this is 90% there. 99% there. I think I might make a change. Eros has a purpose, but Eros did not do his thing nearly as much as I would have liked him to do. Cypher, I love Cypher as a character. I like him as a card. I don't know if he necessarily did enough for me. He might have only drawn me 3 cards the entire convention, which is still pretty good. And then Coulson, I'm actually surprised did not get the play that I would have liked it to. I see what he's here for, and certainly there are things like Prism Dust that I certainly want to grab. I never needed to use him to go get that. If anything, I was most focused on what I would do is there was 1 or 2 paths that I would take with Tigra. Either I would get a bunch of minions into play and wipe them out so that we could just get all the problematic minions like out of the way, because we just did not have a table where someone else was going to carry about minions. Or I would stack them up, draw a bunch of cards, and basically I was just digging for Float Like a Butterfly. Even the strategy where I would take out a bunch of minions was basically to just try to stall for time to make my deck pass to find Float Like a Butterfly and then Sonic Rifle so that I could just set things up to just do a bunch of damage. I do think one thing about this that I made a mistake on was I think I only put 2 copies of Float Like a Butterfly in, so I wasn't able to pass it out as much, but I definitely did pass 1 Float Like a Butterfly to a Justice player in my last game, the one with the New Zealand game designer, so that he could also be doing additional damage with he was a Leadership Nebula deck, or Leadership Gamora deck. So he had out Groot, and he had out what's his name? The whistle guy. Wow, I'm forgetting his name. The guy from the movies with the giant sail and he whistles and the arrow goes around. You know who I'm talking about. He was able to just do a massive amount of damage. But yeah, this deck is solid. I think that just for my own personal taste, I might change 1 or 2 cards, but other than that, there's really no notes. Then maybe the deck of the weekend for me was this deck. It was incredible. I loved this so much. I loved combining Leading Blow, which just enables you to make a big attack. You reduce it a little bit, but if you deal any damage, you're ready back up. Well, if you have out Focused Rage, if you have out Superhuman Strength, you're almost guaranteed. You already have a 3 attack. This bumps you up to 5. You're gonna get another attack. And if you happen to be against, I don't know, like a stalwart villain, you can't stun them, so you don't get rid of the upgrade. And definitely took advantage of that. But just being able to ready up a bunch of times, like there are probably other decks like this. That this is not a new concept that Autumn thought of when she built this. But kudos. This was an amazing deck. Maybe my deck of the convention. It's like when I found the Bishop deck last year. This might be the deck that makes me go, I was kind of so on She-Hulk. I have seen Jesus. I have found my version of She-Hulk that I want to play forever. And then the last deck for the day, the last deck for the weekend was, I just on Sunday decided I wanted to bring something fresh and new. So I brought a Justice Ghost Spider deck. I don't know that this was a successful experiment. Not that there's anything wrong with this. I just think that like I didn't play this correctly, and I've even played it since, and I can now see a little bit better how to kind of tie things together. You need to get out your heroic intuition. You need to get out your heroic conditioning so that you can use things like Waylay and turn the tide effectively. Obviously, we have ways to thwart. Like we have our Phantom Flip and everything, so you do have chances to like use a turn the tide. But I think that I probably needed another 2 or 3 games to really master this, and those games just did not exist at the convention. And so I think that this is another deck where I don't have a huge complaint. I needed more time to really learn how to properly balance this deck out, and I think there's a lot of promise here. But just this was not something that I wholeheartedly enjoyed enough to play it and get the reps in to really kind of master it. But I think this is the deck that I probably will revisit, or some form of it, in the future. But that is everything. I've gone on longer than I was expecting, but actually I could have seen this go on for an hour and a half, which would have been way too much time for me to talk. But go to other conventions, go to MCDC, go to Assemble, go to your local events. I think that was something that came out of the Fantasy Flight Games panel, was that they pointed out, or I might have just overheard this from Olivia, that Marvel Champions is their game that gets the most like conventions or just like local support. Like people come out and just do game nights, and that's good to hear. I'll say that it's not a game that I have a lot of luck necessarily getting out and playing with other people, but it's I'm happy to know that this is a community that wants to support the game, and that Fantasy Flight is seeing that. So go to your conventions, go to your local get-togethers, have a great time, and meet new people, and do better than me. Write down information about people, because I failed to do that, and I feel so bad that there were people that said kind words and that I didn't have the decency to like at least write down their names, who they played, and all that stuff. But until next time, you're doing great. Keep it up.